Deena, thanks for sitting down with me. I appreciate you coming in.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Micah. I'm
Yeah,
excited to be here.
you're gonna be one of the first episodes of this Million Ways to Millions
Hmm.
podcast, which I'm super excited about. Kind of showing people these everyday investors or everyday
Hmm.
people who are finding different ways to build wealth in a
Hmm.
bunch of different ways.
Yeah, there's a ton out there.
Yeah,
It's limited by creativity, and that's it.
yeah. And I feel like it's great because the more we get into this, the
Hmm.
more I meet people who have done it 1,000 different ways.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I didn't know you could go do that or do this. And so I think it's great to just sit down, have a conversation,
Hmm.
and just meet people where they are of seeing exactly what your journey was like.
Yeah.
So getting into it, what does your current portfolio look like? Just introduce
Hmm.
yourself to the audience.
Sure.
How many properties you have in what areas? What does it look
All right. So I own 16 properties right now, 16 doors,
like? Yep.
all my own. I
Okay.
haven't done any partnerships as of yet. It might be in the
Yeah.
future. So they are here in the Twin Cities, also in the western suburbs of Des Moines, and then I have a short-term rental in Florida. So
Perfect.
of those, I have short-term, medium-term, and long-term rentals.
Right across the whole spectrum.
All of
And I
it.
think when we first talked, when we first met, I think one of the cool things that stood out, your statement you said, is that your goal is to make as much money as possible with as few doors as possible.
Yep.
Just kind of contrary to like
Completely
what
contrary.
other people like to do, but it's a great metric or a
Mhm.
great goal to have, and I think you've done really well with that. Especially
Mhm.
working with the short term stuff. I feel like there's a lot of opportunity there.
There is. That has changed. It
Sure.
shifts continuously,
Yeah.
but that definitely has been my most profitable property. And yeah, I mean, to that exact point, I go to these conferences and I hear people talk about like I own thousands of doors, and to me that just sounds like a lot of work and a lot of headache, and I'm splitting it with a lot of people. So
Yeah.
I would rather own as few as possible
Yep.
and make them all as profitable as I can. And that has meant shifting some things. For instance,
Yeah.
one long term I shifted to midterm recently, and
Yep.
it's a much better fit for that house and more
Cool.
profitable in the end. And I'm serving these clients much better in that
Yeah.
way too. So
Well, and
it's
it's
good
great
all
to be
around.
able to be flexible with that. And so
Hmm.
you have a property for a little bit, and then you try a different tactic,
Yeah.
and just whatever can maximize for that location at
Yep.
that point in time.
Exactly.
But just let's rewind a little bit.
Hmm.
So, what first got you into the idea of wanting to buy real estate?
Yeah.
Rather than going to get a normal 9 to 5 job or something like that, you're like, no, I'm going to go buy some property.
Yes. So I had the regular 9 to 5 job. I was a teacher, and then I was a pharmaceutical, a drug salesperson, as I like to say. I
Drug
sold drugs for
salesperson,
a
yeah,
while.
of
Yeah.
course. I
But
love
it
it.
was legit drugs. It was
Little,
legal.
yeah.
Yeah. So I worked for a pharmaceutical company.
Yeah.
And then we had our first daughter, and just decided for me to stay home.
Yep.
But and it was wonderful, and I'm so glad that I had that opportunity to be
Awesome.
home with
Yeah.
both of my girls. And I wanted to
Mhm.
to continue to do something else
Yep.
also, but I wanted to keep that flexibility. I wanted to be
Mhm.
able to drop off, pick up, go to field trips,
Mhm.
volunteer, do all the things that I just wanted to be there for my kids.
Awesome.
And doing real estate gave me that flexibility because I was running my own thing.
Yeah, running your own business.
Hmm.
So what was that? What does that first property look like?
Hmm.
How much, did you live in it? Did you rent it out? What did that look like?
So my first actual investment property we just purchased.
Perfect.
And that was, it was on a 1 acre lot. It was this 1950s Rambler. It was just built like a tank.
Awesome.
And I jumped right into working with planning and zoning and getting engineers out to do surveys, and just really learned by doing right off my first property.
Awesome.
Split that lot, sold the lot that was vacant, and kept the other one with the rental property.
Very, very good.
Yeah. And so that was my first.
So was that a rental, or was that like the living
Rental.
Okay.
Yep.
And so before that, you had just lived in a property, and that's kind of how you got some of the capital together to do the rental stuff. Is that correct?
Yes and no. So we got married in 1999. We were
Perfect.
babies, and we
All
had
good.
both worked really hard and saved up enough to buy a house, but we
Awesome.
were limited. We didn't have a lot of income. We were fresh out of school, and we were both going to be educators. So we were at a private school, and together we made less than $50,000. And being at a private school, you pay both sides of Social Security. So it was the equivalent more of like $40,000 of
Oof.
income. So there wasn't a lot of money, and we
Yeah.
wanted to buy a duplex and house hack and rent out one side. But at that time, it was very similar to what it was a few years ago, where prices were just skyrocketing, and you had to jump on it, make offers right away. So with the prices going up so high, we couldn't swing it to do a duplex. So instead, we bought a home that we were able to fix up ourselves, house hack, We
Yep.
loved it. We're both handy. I mean, give me a power
Mhm.
tool. I'm a happy woman. And so we fixed that up, and within 4 years we doubled it. And then we moved that into our next home that we
awesome.
moved into personally. And then I look at my investing. I've always said that my husband works for our now and I work for our later. So
Okay.
what we did is he's in sales, and when he would get a commission, we would take that and put it into an investment property, buying
Love
something,
it.
fixing it up, and holding it.
And so you basically just budget accordingly to live
Mhm.
off of his base, and
Exactly.
then all the extra stuff goes
Mhm.
right into buying rentals.
Yeah. We were very lucky to have each other because
Yes.
we've both grown up with delayed gratification, like beaten into
Awesome.
us. And that's something we're beating into our children.
Yeah.
But it's just so important. It's that, just because I have the money right now, if I spend it right now, it's gone, and so that's why, exactly like you said, that's what we did.
Yeah.
Was we can live just fine on this base.
Mhm.
Yes, these influxes would come in, but instead of, blowing that on a big vacation, which would be great, or buying a new car, we just put that into our future. We put it into real estate.
And that's a really smart perspective to have of one, I need to invest in my future,
Mhm.
knowing that that's something you need to set aside money for.
Mhm.
With that mindset, obviously there's essentially a bit of sacrifice because,
Mhm.
when companies look at these compensation packages, the commissions, that's part of it.
Yep.
So I can't imagine the base salary was just some extravagant amount, especially with a couple of kids.
Yeah.
So what sort of sacrifices do you guys have to make in order to be able to put aside this money to invest in your future?
It just was making those choices of just not
Mhm.
thinking before spending,
Yeah.
I guess. I mean, that's really what it comes down to
Yep.
is, do we really need that right now?
Yep.
No, maybe it'd be fun. And let me be honest, it's not like we live like paupers. I mean,
No,
we were
sure.
fine. We've lived a wonderful life. And
Yeah.
because of making those choices for delayed gratification, we're now in an even better place at this point, where now not only does my husband have a wonderful job and makes a great income, but now I have a profitable business as well.
Awesome.
Which really, like I said, the initial thought was this would be for our retirement, for college, for weddings, for all of those kinds of things.
Yeah.
But now it's actually profitable, right
Yeah.
now. So we can be
There's
using
enough
it in two
to-
different
yeah,
ways.
that's
So
awesome.
yeah, so that worked out well.
Well, it's because you spent years investing in your future.
Exactly.
Future's now
Yep,
at this point.
it
But
is.
yeah, it takes that sacrifice. You can't just
Mhm.
spend every paycheck you have. You have to purposely set some money
Yes.
aside in order. Like for when my wife and I did our first live-in flip, it
Mhm.
was over a year and a half. We bought a house and then we were fixing it up. It was like save, save, save. Okay, now we can do a renovation and then
Yep.
save, 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 save.
Yep.
Knowing that there's, hey, we got this base, and then if I do some extra work on the side, then I'm able to put some money aside for that as well.
Yeah.
It's a great way to look at it.
With that too, I mean, just one kind of creative finance way that I've done this too is, once you have your own home that you're living in, if people don't know about getting a HELOC, a home equity line of credit,
Yep.
it's the best thing in the world because it's money that's just sitting there. You don't pay interest on it until you pull
Yep.
it out, and it's just available. So two of my properties that I've purchased, I knew I was going to inherently change the property itself, which you
Cool.
can't really do if the bank owns it. So
Yep.
for instance, this one where I was splitting the lot, I knew the bank might not like me splitting their asset, that they co-own with me basically,
Yeah,
and
for sure.
selling it
Oh,
off.
they could definitely have some issues. With
Yeah.
that,
So that one I actually bought with a home equity line of credit, and then went through the whole process, fixed the whole thing up, got the lot split done. And then I refinanced the remaining lot and house and got a mortgage just on that. And then was able to pay off the home equity line.
So did the mortgage remain on both lots until you, or you said you purchased with the HELOC, so it wasn't even
Right.
attached to the property?
Correct.
Very
I used
smart.
partly those commissions and then the rest for the HELOC. So I could just buy the whole thing in cash.
Perfect.
And then do a cash purchase. And then it took a little while to
Yeah.
get that done. But, I was fine making those payments and doing the holding costs. And then when I refinanced, I did not refinance that lot. That remained just owned. And I just refinanced the house as it was fixed up. So now it was worth more, even though it was missing some of the land.
So that HELOC, was that on your personal residence then?
It was on our personal residence.
And that was
Yep.
the one that you had doubled initially?
No, that was we had sold that one and we had moved into another home.
So
Yeah.
bought one house, you
Mhm.
lived in it for 4 years, you doubled it, you're able to move on to the next house.
Yeah,
and
which
then-
we built.
Yeah,
So that was
built from the ground up. That's
we built
cool.
a house,
Awesome.
yep,
Love
which
it.
was a fun
Which is
process.
another great way to build some equity. Is that you start with a vacant plot of land and you build some equity on top of it. That's awesome. And so then after that, you started buying some houses. And so over what period of time did this all occur as you're starting to buy these rentals one at a time?
Everything. I tend to do things faster than I originally planned. It just
Sure.
seems to be the way things go.
I love it.
So when I thought about getting started on this, I first of all was going to wait till my youngest was in kindergarten. That didn't happen. I started when she was in preschool.
Sweet.
Then I found this one, the property I've already talked about,
Yep.
and thought I would do one a year.
Yeah.
Well, then not that long afterwards, another one came on that was a short sale. Great house,
nice.
you know, and it just, I was like, well, I'll pursue it, see what happens.
Yeah.
I got that one. So I was doing 2 rehabs, you know, right away. I hadn't done a rehab before completely.
So what's describe the short sale? What exactly is that?
So a short sale is when the people who own it can't, they can't sell the property for more than they owe.
Perfect.
So you have to get approved by the bank. You have to go through, it's a little bit of a process.
Yep.
But so that one was a 1980s Rambler. That was my second one.
No surprise there.
Yeah, but you know, 1980s, I ended up needing to gut the kitchen. I thought it'd be fine, but 80s kitchens are not well made. So that one needed a lot of rehab as well. So I had those 2 projects going on at the same time. And then just kept doing that with single family homes for a little while. Just kept buying. I called it flip and hold.
Flip and hold.
Because I was flipping it. I was rehabbing it, but for the purpose of holding it as a rental, not for an actual flip.
And then as you hold these properties, are you getting second mortgages or lines of credit on those to help fund that future acquisition?
Yeah, so I have done that. I did, you know, if people have heard of the BRRRR strategy, I only did that on one of them.
Perfect.
And the reason why is that, and you know, there's always pluses and minuses to everything, but once you do that cash out refi and you pull your money out, your mortgage payment goes up a lot because now you have a lot less equity in there, so you have a lot more money that that you're borrowing. So your margin is a lot smaller. So I chose to just let that equity stay in there and grow. Now I'm in a place where I can't refinance on some of these, you know, that are at 2, 3, 4% and get that money out. So, but it's okay because now I'm playing the Monopoly game. And so now I'm doing 1031 exchanges because I have all this equity trapped in these houses. They're not cash flowing the way they should for how much money is available. So now I can take that money out, do a 1031 exchange into a more profitable property. So
kind of backtracking, looking at the strategy.
Sorry,
no, you're fine.
I have a lot of strategies.
It's a great. Well, it's great. The best thing you can do when you're looking at first trying to find what sort of entrepreneurial or investing route you want to go through is education, so that you can learn these different strategies and then have multiple tools in that tool belt to pull from.
Yes.
And so essentially your strategy was buying a single family house, renovating it, and then letting it disproportionately cash flow more than what you had bought it for.
Correct.
Which is a great way to do it, where you're just building those income streams on top of each other. And some people, you know, they don't like that because, you know, hey, I could move so much faster, I could buy so much more. But with less property and less management, you can just hold that thing, pay it down, and then heck, if you would pay it all off completely, you then get another boost of cash flow because you don't have a mortgage payment to pay.
Yes. And for me, it was also a time game. You know, I didn't have the time to do more than that at that point anyway. So there was no reason to keep doing it. It just would have, you know, wasn't really the way things were working for me at that time. So instead I did, I did the kind of buy and hold with, with 5 single family homes. And then my 6th one, I actually bought and did a multifamily conversion. So I bought a single family home and I turned it into a duplex. And that was my largest project. It was an 1890s build. That thing was about to fall apart. So it was really fun. It was a lot of work. And we finished it right when COVID was hitting. So there were all those questions of, you know, is my contractor an essential worker? Can we keep doing this? Can we finish it? You know, so that was an interesting way of doing things. And then after that was when I went into the short-term rental.
Perfect.
So then that was trying to furnish that.
Okay. And this was 2020-ish.
2020. Yep.
Now, did you come across any challenges with 2020 and trying to do short-term rentals? Those turnings?
Mostly not that as much as trying to furnish that thing. If you remember supply chain issues, which was the term no one wanted to hear ever again. So that was really challenging, was just getting that place furnished and ready to go in that amount of time. And then after that, it was what I loved so much about and still do, but especially at that time with the short-term rental, was that it gave this opportunity for families to come back together who hadn't seen each other in this really long time because of COVID. And I got all of these just such grateful messages afterwards because they hadn't seen each other. And this is it's a larger home where multiple families can come together and spend time. And it was really fun and really rewarding to be able to provide that for people.
So as you're transitioning into the short-term rental on these, this is your first short-term rental at the time. So what's the strategy? What is the income difference between, say, a long-term rental and a short-term rental as far as monthly cash flow?
So it's a huge difference, and it's hard to say exactly monthly cash flow.
But it depends on the property.
What I usually like to tell people is short-term rental is the most amount of work, and that is the most amount of money. Midterm rental is the medium amount of work and medium
Yep.
amount of money. And then long-term rental is the least amount of work and the least amount of money.
Yep.
So it's kind of about how much time do you have
Perfect.
to put into this,
Yep.
and how much you can also, you can always hire a property manager, but I manage all of mine on my own except the ones I just bought in Iowa. It's 8 units. So I have a property manager there.
Perfect.
But otherwise I manage all of mine myself, which is completely doable also. People think that's scary, and it is not.
In Minneapolis, you have what is it, 5 units or?
At this point, because I've sold. I've sold. I sold one last year, so yes, I always have to do the math. So yes, so that's I have 6 here.
You have 6 here, and hours per week. How much do you spend managing these properties?
That's hard. Not that many with those, because I still technically manage them myself, but I have a virtual assistant. So she helps me with a lot of things, tenant communication and screening tenants for new ones coming in. And then I also have a handyman who does all of my walkthroughs quarterly, who, kind of keeps in touch with that stuff. So because of that help, I don't need to use as much of my own time. They just bring me things that I need to kind of be a part of. And then otherwise they're amazing and take care of it.
And so it doesn't take you a lot of hours per week. You have about 6 doors. And then after paying your employees, what does that take home?
Oh gosh, I forgot you were going to ask me all these questions.
It's
hard to say because so I have a property management and this like the way you structure everything. So I have one LLC that all is my property management LLC. So everything comes in and out of that one. So including my short-term rental, including all of those. But my single family homes, and that's kind of why I'm doing the 1031s right now, they don't cash flow a lot at this point. So, I mean, I'm probably only making maybe 10 grand a year on those, which isn't a lot, because if you think about anything comes up that you need to cover, I just had.
So is that 10 grand net just
net,
after?
That's net.
After, mortgage, taxes, and all that sort of stuff. And does that include the reserves you set aside, or is 10 grand not including the reserves?
That is it's some reserves, but it just depends what comes up and if that's covered or if you need more.
It's not like sunshine and a rainbow as soon as you buy the property, because there are things that come up all the time. And so, like, as much as people would like to think that landlords are living like kings,
that always makes me laugh.
Well, you think about like 10 grand a year, you got across 6 properties. And so,
no, that's each one.
Okay,
that's each one.
Okay,
but even still, like for instance, one of them so far, I've made about 5 grand, let's say, and then I had to have the siding treated.
Yep.
That was 3 grand.
Well, you got roof.
You know,
I mean,
that's
your HVAC.
So it's
like when we replaced just the AC alone is 4 grand.
Right.
And then there's the furnace and things like that. And so whenever something happens, $10,000 that's not a month. That's the entire year.
That's the year.
Yeah. And so you're making 50 grand, 50, 60 grand. But yeah, if anything goes wrong, if someone puts a hole through the wall, that's all extra on top of that. You definitely have to put some money aside.
And especially with how expensive things have gotten, both to hire someone to do it and the materials, all of that stuff, prices have gone up a ton, as we all are feeling. But so yeah, I mean, that 10 grand a year doesn't go very far, when you're looking at it in that way. So the short-term rental is different.
Yeah. But in what ways has that worked? We're kind of complaining a little bit back and forth about, but it's all good.
It is good. Yeah.
But what's the positive? What sort of benefits have you seen from getting these properties then?
Well, and the biggest thing for me in these is the appreciation. And we all know prices have gone up a ton. I bought them at a good time. I refinanced them into really low interest rates. So those payments are pretty low. And because of that too, I have all this appreciation now so for instance, last summer, I sold one of my properties. I sold the second one I bought, that short sale. So I sold that one, and then I walked away with about $200,000 of equity that I was able to put into 8 units in Iowa. So it's just taking that, what it has earned. Like, sure, maybe I wasn't making a ton of cash flow every year, but now I have that appreciation. I can take out that chunk and move it into something else. So that's why I laugh and say it's like playing Monopoly, because you take your house and then you cash it in and you get your motel. It's kind of a similar way of looking at it.
And so do you see then these long-term rentals as a means to an end of, okay, right now I'm, yes, we're not making as much cash flow, but we're able to afford the renovations and the appreciation here. And then is there something you're moving on to doing next?
Yeah, so I've got a few different things. I've been moving into multifamily, so like those 8 units.
Awesome.
The other thing that I've just really recently been introduced to that I'm really passionate about and excited to move forward with is residential assisted living, which I didn't even know existed. All I knew of for assisted living were these giant big box condo apartment style buildings. And I personally have not been interested in doing syndications and all of that kind of stuff. Maybe someday. Right now, it's just not my deal. But I love the idea of these residential assisted livings where it's more of a single family home environment with maybe 6 up to 16 residents living there. And it's such a better caregiver to resident ratio. So it's a much better situation for the residents and the caregivers. Everybody is happier. And you can just really care for this generation that has done so much for all of us. I just feel like I want to see them in a place where they're respected and taken care of in a really positive way.
I feel like that environment's such a nicer environment to be in, a home, rather than this facility.
Exactly.
Where it's like, okay, well, maybe in an apartment building or something like that, on the positive end of things, but then you being able to provide an actual home or house to live in, I think that's great. And I love the ratio as well.
I love the ratio.
That's
and just, my plan is to bring in a chef, make sure they're having really high quality food. Just all of those little touches, make sure that there's pet therapy coming in and art therapy and just, really neat things that can be done.
You got activities going on.
Yeah, exactly. That's cool. Yeah.
And I bet that's also stuff that you can work with, say, a virtual assistant to help plan some of this to kind of reduce. So you're still providing an affordable model, but also one that does cash flow to you as well.
Right.
Or else there's no point of doing it.
And exactly, it's such a big need right now, and that need is only getting bigger. It's not going away. And again, it just kind of pushes forward that lack of care if they're getting shoved into places where maybe there isn't the support needed. So that's why I just really love to provide.
And so you're talking about finding single family houses with multiple bedrooms that you would then let each resident stay in one room apiece or something like that, or maybe a couple sharing a room or something like that. And then probably having 1 or 2 nurses on staff that live in the building with them.
Or are there, there'd be day staff and then night staff. And, but and it would take some renovation. You want to make sure everything's ADA compliant. I would love for each bedroom to have an ensuite bathroom so everyone can have their own privacy and dignity. And so it will take some work with whatever facility I find. But I just really want it to be a really special place.
So it's so cool sitting here thinking about, okay, you started as a drug salesperson.
Yes, I did.
Started as a drug salesperson. And now we're having a realistic conversation about possibly buying and renovating an assisted living facility. It's really cool to see the progression there. Because there's a lot of thoughts of, okay, maybe you don't have the knowledge to, or like, where did you learn the knowledge to rehab these houses and now possibly start an assisted living, a nursing home or something like that. Like, where do you go to when you're stumped and you're like, I need to learn something now?
Yeah, that is the one thing I cannot encourage people enough is to start networking. And I want to say, when I first heard networking, I'm like, ugh. Like, I don't want to walk into a room and be like, hi, I'm Deena. That just sounds so gross.
Cheese McGee right there.
Yeah, it's like, no, thank you. But it's about finding your people, and it's more just organic. Like when I was looking in Des Moines, that's how you and I met. I told someone else, and they put me in touch with you. And it's about being vocal about what you're doing. And it's amazing. The more you talk about what you're interested in, or what you're looking for, or what you want to do, then it gets people's brains going, and they're like, I know this person, and I know this person, and people inherently want to help each other. So the more you're specific and driven about, like, this is what I want to do, and you tell everybody, the more you find your people. And you need your people. Like, you need to have that tribe around you who, when you're having a hard day or you're beating your head against a wall with an issue, that you can call them, that they can help you walk through it. Like, oh, I dealt with this. Here, call this person, do this. So those things are so important. And so cool. One thing because I talk to a lot of new people who want to get started, and they'll, we'll go out and sit down. And one thing that I cannot stress enough is I hear people who will not network until they get their first deal. It's like they want to earn the right to go talk to people. And I keep telling people, you network to find the deal. You network to learn, to get educated. You go to meetups, you go, to online groups, you go to these things so that you can learn and you can get that first deal, not the other way around.
That's a very vital piece to think about. And maybe for people who are very nervous thinking about going into, there's all these real estate investors or whatever, or maybe they have this mindset of like, maybe they only care about money and things like that. That's not been my experience.
Not in the least.
When going to these real estate meetups. People I've met at these meetups are some of the most genuine and nice people. And they very much from their heart want to help.
Yes.
which I've even tried to reciprocate that as I've started taking those steps into being slightly successful in one way or another. But it's amazing to go into those groups and people are just willing to spill the beans in any regard or help you out or connect you with the different people they need.
I will say real estate investors are, in general, there's always an exception, the most giving and caring group of people that I have ever met. Everybody just wants to help out the next person. And, you know, one mentor that I've worked with, she always says, you've got one hand reaching up and you've got one hand reaching down to pull the next person up with you. You know, that's just what this is all about. And, you know, I'll also say, don't be afraid to pay for coaching too. You know, like sometimes that is the easy button that people need. If you have the time and you don't have the money, then yes, go learn for your own. You've got YouTube, you've got meetups, you've got all these things. But also don't be afraid to do mentorship groups or coaching groups, because those have pulled me forward a lot faster when I've done some of those as well.
Yeah, and I did the whole coaching round as well, paid for a mentor event. And that's how I was able to take the step into commercial and understanding just the numbers behind it. I was able to sit down with someone who'd done it before. So yeah, the coaching groups, you know, you got to be careful out there, but there are a lot of amazing, really genuine groups. So thinking about the, you know, the people that we meet at these groups, why do you think there's this mindset or there's this helpful mindset that people have? You would think that, you know, everyone just wants to grab as many deals they can or else they're going to run out. Why, you know, you're laughing. I know you're getting that. But, but why do you think this mindset exists?
So I think two different things. I think first of all, people see the creativity that it takes. And that's why I love that you're doing this show, because I love hearing about all these different creative ways that people are making their futures, you know, and because it's endless. It's literally endless. It's based on your creativity or lack thereof, and that's it. So I think people realize there's no end to this. That's the other point I was going to say, is it's this abundance mindset versus scarcity mindset. And that's something I think we as humans all deal with in different areas of our life. We got to move toward that abundance. But I think people in this group tend towards either already having that mindset or actively trying to attain an abundance mindset. And just meaning that there is no end. There's always going to be more deals. There's always going to be more stuff to do.
There's more deals out there than any of us could ever do. And I think part of it too is as we're participating in, you know, wealth building, is that we're experiencing the abundance. And so the fact that you went and bought a house, you spent a certain amount of money on the house, and then after you're left over, the house is now worth more than all of that money put together. And so you've now just created money, you've created wealth and value. And I think that's the biggest thing. Like, there's a lot of negative connotations when it comes to the money aspect of it, but think about, you're creating value for somebody.
You are.
Because now you have this beautiful home for somebody to be able to live into, and now you're also creating a beautiful home for someone to retire in. And being able to create that value and that service. And that's what we're really getting at, is we're seeing the value that we're creating for people in the investing that we're taking part of. And then it's so fun for me to be able to go to an event and then meet somebody and then connect them. So, you need a drywall guy? Well, here you go. You know? And it doesn't cost me anything. But now we have this connection. Now, it's not like I'm going to call the note due. That's not how this works. But it's just that, you know, I worked really hard and I would love to help the next person.
And other people have helped me get to where I am. And so now I want to help other people get to where they can get to. You know, it is that whole thing of us just pulling each other up. And I think that's so important. And I don't know, I wouldn't be where I am today without all the people that have helped me. I just wouldn't. And 100%. I've learned from their mistakes to cut different ones out of my experience. And I've had mistakes that I have then been able to share shortcuts for other people, because like, hey, don't do this, you know, and then they'll have that shortcut and they'll mess up in some way and they'll learn and they'll pass that on to someone else, you know, and that's just how we learn and how we help each other.
That's a great way to think about it. And again, continuing to learn and continuing to exchange the information. And you know, it's something that we've built over a long period of time. You've been doing this for 20 years, or what is it?
Since almost 10 years.
Almost 10 years.
9 years so far.
I thought 99. I was like,
that's when we got married. I guess that's our first house hack.
You bought a house. Kind of. That house allowed you to help build that value as you're rolling into it. And so really, it's been a journey of 20 years of you being able to build the wealth and getting the leverage that you need. And so that's 20 years of patience. That's 20 years of hard work. That's 20 years of, you know, wanting to give up sometimes.
There are times that I'm like, why am I doing this again? But it is always worth it. You know, I mean, it just is. And even those times when I'm like, I don't know how to move forward with this.
Yep.
You just figure it out. What's
Yep.
the alternative? You know, so you just keep going,
Yeah.
figure it out, you know, like I'm not going to crawl in a hole and it's not going to disappear. So, and that's, you know, to your point too, about serving other people. I have always told the people that lived in my homes that if I wouldn't live with it, you shouldn't live with it.
Yep,
so
100%.
I've always said that, like, I'm always going to take care of this place. If there's an issue, I'm on it right away.
Yeah.
So it always has truly been a great place for my tenants to live, you know, and they love being there.
You're telling me you're not this slumlord?
No.
So because what happens, because why don't you just not fix these things? What happens to your tenants?
Yeah, exactly. Two things. First of all, you're not going to have great tenants because no one wants to live in a place that's terrible. So they're going to just make it worse. But second of all, it's my asset.
Yeah, it's your house.
It's my
yeah.
house. I own it. Why would I want someone in there that's not going to take care of it? And why would I not want to take care of it? Like, that doesn't make sense.
They'll just leave. You know?
Yes.
So like, we want to create a good opportunity for people because it is beneficial for us.
Yes.
For the tenants to have a great experience.
For the neighbors, for everybody.
Neighbors, yeah.
Yes.
Being able to take, and it's funny because I feel like all the properties I bought, it's just like in kind of crap holes, and so like you're turning them around and you're able to like really uplift the community.
Exactly.
You got neighbors walking over and be like, oh, thanks for buying that.
Yeah, I know, that was really sketchy.
And
yes.
So again, and that goes on to adding value. Like we're trying our best to, like, I think the ripple effects of, you know, someone going into it with that mindset of adding the value are just dramatic, of seeing how it affects an entire neighborhood, which is really kind of a blessing that we get to experience as we're, you know, going this route of building wealth. Yeah,
it is. It truly is. And that's why it just really is a rewarding thing to do, and a rewarding group of people to be a part of.
So cool. So thinking about your journey, what would you say is some of the biggest levers that you use when it comes to building wealth? Like, so what are those, you know, we talked about strategies. So what are some of these strategies that you're using that you've used over and over again? You're like, this is one of the things I attribute most of my wealth generation to.
Yeah. I've used a lot of different strategies. Yep. So I would say, especially for people getting started, kind of my flip and hold strategy was the best way. It was the best way for me to get started. I still think it would be, outside of house hacking, which we also kind of did. I tell all of the younger people that I meet, like, just house hack, you know, just buy like a fourplex, live in one and fix it up while you rent out the others, and then just keep moving around. You know, as someone moves out, go fix up that one, and then fix them all up and go buy another one, live in that one, you know, like
refi, and
that's the best way to do it.
Just hold
that is the best way to do it.
That's awesome.
But then, you know, just getting creative with the different, you know, people always say have multiple tools in your tool belt. You know, I think it's usually, there's never going to be just one. You've got to be able to see the different ways to get a deal, to take care of that deal, all those different things. So having that HELOC, if people have their own personal home, is a no-brainer, again, because it's just sitting there. You don't pay any interest unless you use the money. It gives you flexibility. So if you find a great deal, you could buy cash, and you could be the one that gets that deal, because you can act faster. And then, you know, 6 months later, whenever, refinance and get a mortgage.
And all it takes to get that HELOC is, you know, after having bought that first house, is you could just sit in it for 10 years and do nothing. And then you suddenly have this equity there from your pay down and then from the appreciation. And that's without doing any renovation.
Right.
And
that's just owning the home.
Yeah. If you want to accelerate it a little bit more, you do a little bit of renovation. Just set aside, like, you know what, I'm going to do one project a year.
Yeah.
Of just, you know, I'm going to replace the carpet here. I'm going to repaint this. And then over time, it doesn't have to be a quick turn. Because I think when people think about what the wealth generation, a lot of people think about just, hey, how do we retire?
Yes.
And if you're going to play, like, the great thing with real estate is that if you play that long game, like, there's no way that you're going to lose.
No.
As long as you participate.
Yes. Yeah. And because there are going to be ups and downs. And right now, the market's not easy. But, you know, I've always heard, like Brandon Turner always says, pick your hard. You know, pick your hard. Like, it's really hard to get up and get off the couch and go to the gym and work out. It's also really hard to have health issues because you're not taking care of yourself. Like, pick one, you know? So work hard and make money, or don't have money, which is also really hard. Like, either way, it's hard. So just pick one and go with it. And
emphasizing that, it is hard. You know, like, I'm not like, now we do have the benefit of being able to start building that wealth, which is great. And so being able to have that more comfortable lifestyle, but it comes with, the stress is always on. Like, you don't clock out.
No,
because
I never clock out. At any
That's
point, my family.
At any point in time, someone calls, like, hey, so-and-so put his fist through the wall and, you know, ripped out this, you know, water line, and now there's your basement's flooded. You know, at any point in time, you know, and especially with businesses that are starting to be kind of, they're 24/7.
Yeah.
And that's what the long term, any of these real estate assets are, they're 24/7 because people are there.
Well, and especially like when I moved into short-term rentals, my goal is that I respond within 5 minutes to a guest. That's tough. And I will tell you, I was going to go to med school and I didn't because I didn't want to be on call. And I'm like, wait a second, I'm on call all the time. What was I doing?
What happened here?
Wait a second. Again, going full circle. But I mean, it never fails. It's always when I'm out for some special family dinner or I'm, and the internet's down and I'm trying to troubleshoot from my phone. And, but you live and die by your reviews. As a short-term rental host. 100%. So you've got to be on that. You have to show them that you're taking care of them and that you're making sure that they have what they need. And that's not convenient. Yeah. Well, and so it's like you get the benefit of, yes, you get the cash flow from the short-term rental because there's the higher turn rate and that's fantastic. But then, you get the downside that, you either got to always be on call or you got to start paying people to be on call, which neither, those are both sacrifices in their own right because now you don't get as much of that cash flow. But it's definitely, you got to pick your heart. You do. So you got to pick your heart. You got to pick it. Like, well, I might as well. Or I'm going to sit here and be like, well, if I buy a house, I might have to fix this. I might have to. The roof might get cave in, or so. There's all these if, ands, or buts about it. It's like, but then you're going to miss out on the wealth generation tool that's sitting in front of you. Exactly. So you might as well. I'd rather have the money. I would too. And I enjoy it. I mean, I really do. I enjoy it. So you get the whole package. You have to answer that's about it. I love that. So what would you call some of your biggest challenges throughout this journey? Because when we talked about some of the sacrifices you have to make, especially when you're getting started and trying to get the first down payment together, that's hard. Yeah, that is. What are some of those challenges? And then as you're starting to buy and get more responsibility, what are the challenges that you're facing? As you're trying to build that? Yeah, I think right now, a lot of it is learning how to delegate and how to get some of it off my plate. Awesome. I am a recovering perfectionist and a recovering control freak, as I like to say. So learning someone also told me, done is better than perfect. That is my new mantra. Done is better than perfect. And sometimes people that you delegate to, they're not going to do it the way that I would do it. That's okay. Did it get done? That's the bottom line. So I think learning how to do that. There's a great book by Dan Sullivan called Who Not How. Absolute game changer for me, especially with that Midwest work ethic of like, I can do it. I can fix a toilet. I'll watch a YouTube. But knowing that I could, you're right, I could do that. But is that the best use of my time? Or is that maybe a better use of someone else's time? And then it gives them the opportunity to make money and it gives them an opportunity to support their family. So that's an amazing book. And that really helped change my mindset. So those are some of the bigger challenges now because it is too much for one person to do. 100%. I mean, managing 16 properties and I'm a realtor and I'm, a mom trying to be there for my kids. And it's a lot of time. And even with the support, it's still a lot of time. So it's that continual, kind of picking away at what else now do I need to hand off, and continue with. So that's kind of at this stage in the game. I would say early on, just each project, as you're in that project, you can have the best scope of work when you start out on that thing. You can have everything, you got your bids from all your contractors and I do all the best I can to get that done. But there will always be things that come up, always. So you have to just be ready to roll with the punches, be ready to be flexible and just kind of do what needs to get done to continue with it. When I was doing that multifamily conversion, doing that single family to a duplex, honestly, there were a lot of things that were hard about that one. It was in terrible shape and, I'm completely restructuring a whole building. But in order to get the zoning variance that I needed, I had to get signatures from a certain number of residents around there. And it wasn't as much that the residents had a problem with it. The problem was that it was January in Minnesota. And I have to go door to door. No one wants to come outside. And this is in St. Paul. And in this area of St. Paul, most places, all the houses have these screen porches. Well, people use those screen porches as storage. So you can't get to the front door. I'm not going to walk into someone's like storage screen porch to go knock on their door. So you literally can't get in touch with people. So that was the hardest challenge. I was sending mailers. I was making phone calls. I did an open house. I did like anything I could do to just get them in the door, tell them what I was doing, get their signature. And so that was a huge challenge. So there's just always little things like that. And you just have to get creative. And again, that's where your network comes in too, of calling other people and saying, hey, have you dealt with this? Do you have any ideas for me? I'm out of ideas. What do I do? But yeah, so each project has their own.
You're picking your hard, and then, yeah, you have to be ready for the problem solving and giving yourself. I think of just understanding. Yeah, done is better than perfect. Of, you know what, I just need to get done.
Yeah,
and I need to make this happen, and you're still going to get those benefits from it, but also not being too hard on yourself. I feel like one of the things people don't talk about too is the mindset as you're going through this, is that like you're not thinking of yourself as some badass real estate investor.
No.
You're like, man, what the heck did I get myself into?
And like, how do we just get this done?
I should have just got a job. Like, this is so.
There are days I think that.
There are days like that.
A job I could just leave it there. Like when I get home, I can't do it anymore. You know, that would be great. Some days that would be great.
But the benefits you've had.
Yes.
Where you now have this great portfolio. You have an income stream.
Yeah.
And on top of your husband's income stream, and so you're able to have this great amount of stability that you wouldn't have had otherwise. Yeah. It's because you're willing to put the work into it.
It is, and I think the flexibility too still remains to be
being able to be flexible. Because you have control over your own schedule of like you can choose whether or not you hire it out or whether or not you do it yourself. And then when you want to go do that, that's and where
I want to do it from. I'm at this point too. The buying out of state was one of the most freeing things I ever did.
Ooh,
because it showed me that, and again, it forced me to let go. Yep. I can't go over there and look at it. I'm in Minnesota and it's in Florida. That's not happening. No. And that was one of the best things I could have done. And it forced me to try to treat my properties here as if they're out of state.
What was the key couple systems you had to quickly develop when you bought that property in order to make that possible?
Yeah. With short-term rentals, the two biggest ones are you need a cleaner that can take care of it and will be in touch with you and is taking really good care of your property because they're your eyes all the time.
Taking photos before and after.
Yep. That's a big part of it. And then a good handyman who understands the short-term rental business. Both the cleaner and the handyman, they have to understand what they're in for. It's not just a cleaner who shows up at your house once a week and can show up whenever. I mean, they have a lot to do in a very short amount of time. They work really hard, and they have to understand the importance of being there on time and being out on time.
Well, they check out at a certain time, and they're checking in at 3 o'clock.
Yep.
There's no ifs, ands, or buts about
there that. There aren't. I've got 6 hours, and sometimes there might be something broken, and so then you need that handyman who is available during that clean. Who can get over there and take care of it, and who's really good. And that you need those two people on your team, or I don't know how it would work. Otherwise, you might need a property manager because they make or break the business.
Awesome. All right. So if you could start over all again, we're have a couple questions to help wrap this up. But if you could start over again, are there changes you would make to the strategy, or do you think that you don't regret a thing?
I don't regret the way I've done it. I think I would do it similarly. If we could have house hacked right away in a multifamily, even better. That would have been great. So I do think that's still ideally the best way to start, especially if you're young. But I think trusting myself faster and giving up control faster. I think those would be the things that would have propelled
this. Kind of seems like a paradox, but so with the trusting yourself faster, what sort of challenge, what are you referring to with that?
Well, honestly, they kind of go together.
Yeah.
Because in picking the right person, you have to trust yourself that you have picked the right person to hand it off to. And then give up control and let them do what you hired them to do.
Yeah.
No
one wants to be
that you made the right decision, so let them go do this. And so I think probably outsourcing faster, bringing more people in faster and not trying to do everything myself.
Well, and that's even from day one, that comes from brokers, that comes from
agents and
contractors. I spoke to this one guy and he was getting his GC license, his insurance license, and his mortgage license so that he could do it all himself.
You should buy him the book, Who Not How.
I was like, buddy,
send that right over.
The best thing the one of my favorite parts when I was buying that first house was using my realtor.
Oh, yes.
And using their knowledge.
Yep.
And then using my lender and she my mortgage broker, and she was able to find me the right sort of debt and give me advice on the debt to use.
Exactly.
So even from day one, there's delegation you need to use.
Yeah, and exactly what you said. I mean, so I was working with agents who had been investing. I'm starting.
Yep.
They've been investing for a really long time. So I can learn so much more from them right out of the gate than trying to figure that out myself and buy it myself without an agent. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. When you really think about it, pay people for their expertise. They have earned it.
Yep.
So pay them for that because they're helping you. Awesome. So that's one thing that I've learned and wish I would have done faster. And same thing too, like we talked about, is that paying for coaching. That as a Midwesterner, that's hard.
It's hard. You're worried that you're maybe going to get ripped off, or like, oh man, I can figure it out.
Is it worth it? I could do it.
Yeah, but if you can swing it, I think it's definitely something that it can be very beneficial. So So last question,
Mm-hmm.
what sort of advice would you give somebody from the experience that you've had? What sort of advice
Mm-hmm.
would you give someone who's just getting started on choosing that right path and say they want to go about starting to invest in real estate and they decide, you know what, maybe scaling huge isn't for me, but I can
Yeah.
do this on my own. What sort of
Mm-hmm.
advice would you give them?
I would say because each individual person's situation is going to be different on,
Mm-hmm.
what expertise do they have or how much money do they have or
Yep.
time or all those pieces. So I think the most important thing they can do is go start talking to people.
Yep.
Just go talk to everybody, learn everything
Yep.
they can, listen to podcasts, watch
Mm-hmm.
YouTubes, but mostly get out and talk to people physically,
Real people. Yeah.
real humans.
Real humans out
We
there.
can get stuck in that podcast land and it's great. There's a ton of education,
Mm-hmm.
but talk to humans. And just the more I think people talk to other people, they will learn and their path will kind of start to unfold itself and they'll be able to see which way is right for them.
Awesome. Thank you, Deena, for coming in.
Thanks,
I appreciate
Micah.
being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having
Yeah.
me. This was great. I appreciate
Fantastic.
it. All right. And scene.
Yeah, scene.
Yeah.
Perfect. There you go.